So, what's up, y'all? Once again, I'm back, Soul of a Nerd, and I am here to do my full review of Avengers Endgame. I've seen the movie. The movie's been out 2 weeks now. I have basically seen it 4 times now. So, after the third, I was pretty much had my conclusion for my reviews. Still saw it one more time for good measure. This is gonna be spoiler filled, so I'm going all out. And when I did my reaction video, which is posted here on the 27th, which is when I saw it opening weekend, I tried my best not to go into details of how I felt about the movie, and also because I knew, similar to the way I felt about Infinity War, that it was a movie. Actually, well, I'm not gonna say a lot of Marvel movies, but a few of Marvel movies, MCU movies, require multiple viewings because they do a good job of making expansive stories that aren't just surface and they have layers, and that's a credit to them that they make movies that require you to look at subtle nuances and subplots and things like that. Just as a side note, I just watched Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 again the other day, and I haven't seen that movie. I think I saw it twice, once in the theaters and once on well, I don't even own the DVD for that, but maybe I only saw it once then. Anyway, prior to seeing it the other day, I must have watched it once on Netflix, and then I watched it again on Netflix, and it was interesting to watch it again after a long absence and with other movies in between. And it kind of changed where I had it ranked, because I used to have it ranked. Man, my hands are pale. But I used to have it ranked right behind Guardians 1, and now, like, there's a bigger distance in my mind. Guardians 1 is clearly the movie I prefer to Guardians 2, and Guardians 2 has fallen, like I said, several notches in terms of the overall MCU. Which I could go into that in this video, but I'm not going to do that as far as ranking my full 22 movies now that we're at Endgame's conclusion. But let's get back to Endgame. So, there were some things that I expressed in my reaction video that I had some problems with, some beefs, and they were major beefs when I walked into that theater. So again, I wanted to watch it again and see, can I appreciate some things more that I didn't necessarily appreciate the first time, or that I felt were lacking the first time. So I did that, and again, I've seen it again since then. But before I get to that, so let me just say, basically my beef did not change. So I just want to point this out. This is something that I was beefing with from the first time I saw it all the way through to now. Like I said, going on number 4. And I pretty much don't see that changing. So sorry, gotta make a few adjustments here. So with that being said, one more second. See, it's not professional, but hey, whatever. And look at that. I'm back, and with the magic of video editing, I now have a cup of coffee. Yeah, man, look at my hands. Well, I wear gloves at work like 95% of the time, so I think my hands don't get enough light. Not that I'm getting a lot of sunlight anyway in a warehouse, but anyway, so look, let's get into the movie itself. The plot, briefly, we all saw the end of Infinity War, which, again, after seeing that movie twice, or more than twice, it's actually it's number 2 in my favorite MCU movies behind the first Avengers movie from 2012. I give it a 10 out of 10. It's actually a phenomenal movie, despite my problems with some things like, not seeing the Hulk in the movie, but, understanding what they were doing with the storyline, because I knew in advance that they were planning to do some, a story arc with the Hulk and Banner. So, now, my channel is called Soul of a Nerd. I am a nerd. I'm an MCU nerd. So I follow the MCU behind the scenes. So I know a lot of things that are going on. Therefore, I try to factor those things in when I see these movies. That being said, Infinity War was great. Thanos, dope villain, so on and so forth. Coming into Endgame, with all the spoilers, I did get some spoilers, and again, some of those unfortunately took away from some moments of this movie that I really probably would have enjoyed more, and I regret it. So right from the beginning, I was kind of gripped into the story. Awesome opening with Hawkeye and his family, which was kind of predictable. I mean, I knew that his family was probably completely dusted, and that's why he was going to be drawn into this movie, since he wasn't even in Infinity War. And that previously was kind of, if you followed anything closely about the story and images that were seen, the rumors that he was going to be an assassin, vengeance type character, who in the comics went by the name Ronin. He changed his name to Ronin. Of course, MCU doesn't do all that stuff, because realistically, it's kind of corny when you just do that in movies. You see rarely any of these characters go by these superhero titles. Nobody's walking around calling him Hawkeye all day, or Black Widow, even Captain Marvel. You see in the movie they call her Danvers. So, by the way, did I say this was spoilers? So, yeah. So I just thought that was dope. I expected it, but the way they played it out was effective. Jumped right into it, making that the opening scene. I figured that would be an opening scene anyway, just because the way they did the post-credit for Ant-Man and the Wasp, that's how you're immediately tying these other characters into what happened with the snap. It's like, oh yeah, this guy wasn't even in the last movie, and look at what happened with his family, that kind of thing. Showing how the snap has spread into other movies or other characters' lives who you didn't see in Infinity War. So, brilliant beginning, well played. What's my man, Jeremy Renner? I mean, the entire cast of MCU up to this point for the Infinity Saga, as they call it, it's just magical, once in a lifetime, stars cross, lightning in a bottle, all those cliches type of situation. Everybody, I actually leading up to Endgame, and shortly after, was just doing a lot of watching the YouTube videos of interviews of the different groups of the cast. And every time, it's just like you just want to be a part of it. They just look like they have so much fun, and that they respect what they're doing so much in each other and the whole process. So it's a beautiful thing. Beautiful thing. For anybody who's into being an artist and collaborative performance and creation, to see that kind of synergy happening, that's goals. That's what any one of us could want. Whether you work on music in a band, whether you are an actor, dance, choreography, anything, So that being said, where do we go from there? They went to Stark and Nebula, which is always curious to me. That stood out to me. That's just kind of guy I am. Like the end of Infinity War, when I saw everybody dusted, I'm like, so you you have left Tony Stark left with this alien slash cyborg type of being that he has no idea about, stranded on a planet and they have no idea how they're getting home. I thought it was an interesting choice to have those two end up stranded together. And it played out in the beginning of the movie. Again, these Feige, the Russos, McFeely, and dang, what's the writer? Marcus these are last names. Marcus and McFeely are the two last names. They're writers. And then the Russo brothers and Kevin Feige. It's just a dream team. That's what is that? Five people. It's a basketball team right there. And brilliant. They must have knew what they were doing by leaving that situation, and it was great little opening scene. His monologue as he thinks he's dying and everything, and then another factor that I thought would happen, Captain Marvel. Well, I suspected that Captain Marvel was going to be the one to come and get them out of space. Now, it's interesting how they did that, because they did not give us any lead up to that. And in fact, we don't see that post-credit scenes from Captain Marvel in this movie. So I think what they're assuming, and I haven't seen anybody cover this on any YouTube that I follow, in discussing the post discussion of this movie, is that she just pops up and then brings them back to the Avengers headquarters, or wherever they are. Yeah, the Avengers headquarters. So, which tells me that scene where at the end of Captain Marvel, where they're watching the beeper and then she just pops up and she's like, "Where is Fury?" That apparently happens before those events in Endgame. Kind of like the post credits of Thor Ragnarok, and then in Infinity War just starts. Thanos is already on the ship. It's the same kind of thing, and I like that. I mean, it's just dope. It's new, subtle things they do that, like, I guess they're not. They trust their intelligence with their audience to figure these things out. So yeah, I haven't heard anybody question that. Like, how does she just go get him and know where to take him? That's because that scene from the end of her movie takes place before that. But they didn't need to show it in the movie Endgame. So they probably got her up to speed on everything that happened. I guess maybe Banner probably mentioned that Tony was out in no, not Rocket. Well, yeah, Rocket would know. That's a good one. Well, yeah, Banner would know that Tony went out into space on that ship. So maybe she just went and found him somehow. So that's cool. So it's not a plot hole how she did it. I mean, if you put those two together. But anyway, that was a great way to just get right into it, bringing her right in to the conversation, so on and so forth. They go to find Thanos, and long story short, this is something I predicted. I have it in a video that I posted a week or so before the movie came out, where I was sitting in my car talking about pre-Endgame thoughts, and that was that somehow or another they were going to find Thanos, basically, they were going to either lose in a battle with him, or not even have to battle him, or win in a battle with him, but still not be able to reverse anything because of whatever reason that he tells them the stones, aren't going to help you, blah, 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 which is pretty much exactly what happened in that sense, that he said the stones can't be used. And then, and I also said he might be done with early in the movie, because they had to do something to put him out of the storyline, because I already knew they were going to spend a nice chunk of the movie, I guess, doing some time travel. And that's what happened. So that was kind of surprising when Thor went for the head. That was dope, though. The intensity and emotion in that scene was dope. Acting, the pacing of this movie was great. For it to be 3 hours, phenomenal pacing. In editing. Better editing than in Infinity War, actually. Even though it was 3 hours. The editing was better. There were some editing issues I had with Infinity War, that it seemed a little choppy sometimes. and dialogue was running too quick sometimes. But this one, I guess because they had 3 hours, they stretched it out a little bit, but pacing was great. So the long, I'm not gonna go play by play with this. Let me just get into. I thought the script was good. I thought the story was good. I thought the first part of the movie with them um, trying to change things and it didn't happen, and then flipping 5 years later, which was another thing I predicted in my other video, that there would have to be some time lapse where they're just so distraught now because this thing just didn't work. There was nothing they could do, and then Scott Lang pops up. It wasn't exactly how I thought he would. I thought he was going to actually end up popping up in some old Avengers scenes before making it back to the current year. But I guess that would have been kind of crazy anyway. It would have been entertaining. But I knew there's going to be some sort of time travel where he ends up back in the time during the Avengers first getting together. But I thought he was going to just stumble into that and then somehow figure out that he's not in the right time period and that all this other stuff happened, which would have made probably an even longer movie because they would have had to explain that and get themselves back to the present to talk to the present characters and then go back. So anyway, that from that point on, the movie got really good. It was already good. The drama, the conversations, the scenes between Cap and Natasha. When Tony gets back, oh yeah, when Tony got back to Earth, that scene, that next scene where he's going off on Cap and Thor sitting in a corner, you know what I mean, and everybody's just hurting and distraught, was again phenomenal. It was like I was tripping. Like I was actually surprised at how thrown off I was. I did not see that coming. Robert Downey Jr. was killing those scenes, and it was hard to watch because you think about how those two departed in Civil War, and this is their first time seeing each other again. It's in a tragic moment, and it was real because sometimes people react to things differently, and Tony's always been kind of a hothead in the sense that, you know, well, he's not a hothead, but he is a very actually strong-minded. Like he keeps himself in check, and he knows what the heck he's talking about. So it's like when he loses it and goes off on you, it's because, you know, he's thinking, come on, I had an idea. I was trying to do the right thing before, you know. And it was a good piece of dialogue because when he said, you know, I wanted to build a suit of armor around the world, you know, like Cap was like, yeah, look how that turned out though. So it's like he wasn't about to just lay down and let this dude dog him because Tony was still a little bit off in terms of like trying to get on his high horse about how he was trying to prevent all this stuff from happening. Yeah, you were. Yes, you saw this coming and you were, you know, concerned about it, but you didn't really have your method of resolving it wasn't the best either, you know, that kind of thing. But yet, you know, he still got his point across, and they kind of let him go off because in that moment it's almost like you got to kind of let this guy have this moment. And like, you know, he's looking over at Thor, and it's kind of cool because it's like they're a family. It sounded like a family moment where he, you know, you really don't expect Thor. Well, you can, because again, Tony's the type of dude. He's so arrogant and cocky. He will talk smack to people. It was kind of weird. It was dope, interesting, well written for him in the way he played it, where like he just looked over, he's like, what's wrong with him? You know, like what's this guy doing over here sitting in the corner all sulking, you know? And I like that. He's just a snarky, he'll fly off the mouth and say what's on his mind in a moment. Because he's relentless at that point. You know, he doesn't want to see nobody sulk. Like, what do you got to sulk about? What's the matter with you? I'm showing my emotion. Why are you just sitting over there acting like a, you know, that kind of thing. And like I said, he was getting in. He was getting on Cap. I mean, I'm Team Cap all the way. So, you know, I still feel like, okay, Tony, but, you know, Cap, you know, Cap, he ain't the one you really want to come for in this situation. But you can understand where he's coming from. And then his line to Rocket, he said, I thought you were Build-A-Bear. hilarious. And then the funny thing is, Rock was like, maybe I am. I mean, it's just like the dryness and despair of the characters of that moment. It was just, it's funny, but it was well written because these are some people who, if you know their characters individually, like it's totally in character for them, you know. Rocket, you got something for him. Rocket can come right back with you, come back at you, you know. And then Tony even threw a compliment at Captain Marvel. He's like, you're great, by the way. You know, that's the kind of thing he does. And he said, like, we need some new blood in here because, you know, you're old news, Cap, or something like that, you know, got in his face. Anyway, I love that scene. That's actually, you know, if we were to skip ahead, that's one of my favorite scenes in the movie. Like, in terms of drama and just these actors getting in the dialogue. It's just, everything about it was well created and conceived and produced and performed. So we get into the time travel thing. I also like the scene with his daughter, Tony's, the 5 years later, that is. So let's get into the 5 years later. So seeing the characters 5 years later, you know, everything was cool. So what I'm gonna really just say, if I'm not talking about it, it's because it was cool with me. So I'm gonna talk about the parts I liked a lot, and the parts I didn't like a lot. So seeing where Black Widow was, I thought that was cool. She was kind of running the Avengers, this, you know, skeleton crew of Okoye, which, by the way, I thought about it after seeing it a couple times. That's a little off. That's a little bit of a plot hole, or, you know, a little inconsistency, because so in 5 years, they didn't really address what the heck is going on in Wakanda, you know. So she's just out here. This is one of the most staunchly against Wakanda losing its independence and, you know, collaborating and being known to the world, but now she's just working with the group of Avengers, you know. And you could say, well, if she bonded with these people and they're lost, then you guess you have to kind of give them benefit of the doubt and assume that a lot of that happened in those 5 years. But even still, you can't fit it all in there. But I don't know. They had to. I don't know. That's nitpicky, but to me, it's like, there was a little bit of a hole there they could have filled some way with even just one scene. I mean, I know the movie's already 3 hours, but maybe you could have cut something else a little bit to get that, so that we could understand why is she, like, specifically, why is she rolling with Captain Marvel, Rocket, and Rhodey? 'Cause I think that was only four characters that were reporting still. Because I guess that's all who's left. Wasn't dusted. You know, Tony's not involved at all. And Thor walked away. He just went and disappeared after cutting off Thanos' head. So that the idea that they showed us that, I thought was cool. It's like some have moved on, some of them are still trying to stay together and still act as the Avengers, you know. And I thought it was cool to have Black Widow kind of running things, and then Cap is, I guess, being a counselor or something. So he comes in. So you get the impression he's kind of retired too. It's like, in a way, it's like, what are y'all doing? You know, for 5 years, y'all don't have no villains or nothing to fight. But, you know, let's not be too analytical. So that was cool. And I liked, you know, again, the kind of incorporating Captain Marvel a little bit more. Given the idea that she's now gotten to know them a little bit 5 years later, and she's still doing her thing, but she's kind of down with the crew, you know. Then we get to what I don't like. I do like I said, I like the fact Tony's married to Pepper and they got a daughter. That girl's adorable too, and the chemistry was great. But a lot of I'm gonna say a lot, but, you know, I've seen this is a divisive issue for these two characters, and that would be, as they're calling it now, Fat Thor and Professor Hulk, I guess we'll call him. So, which happened first? Yeah, let's go to Professor Hulk. I was surprised as heck because it's like they had the line where they were like, "We need somebody," because Tony didn't want to do the time travel, so they said we're gonna have to get somebody else with a big brain and smart. That line already led me. Oh, okay, let's go find Banner. Little did I expect they're gonna go find this Banner, who's now merged together and they're in a diner. I personally, I don't know. I was in such shock, literally such shock. I don't think I reacted at all the first time I saw it, except I don't know. I don't think I laughed, and I know I know I've seen people say that in their theaters. You know, people I follow on YouTube, they say every time they've seen this movie, the crowd laughs, and I get that. I heard people laugh. In fact, because I couldn't even hear the dialogue of when he was talking to when he told Scott, "You want to take the picture," and all that stuff. Plus, I was probably turning to my daughter in shock, saying something, because this is just not what I was expecting. Like, they just skipped whatever reconciliation he had from Infinity War, where he was struggling with the Hulk coming out, to y'all are merged and you're sitting here in a diner with, you're calm and you're eating breakfast and just hanging out with people. I wasn't feeling that. That's just to be plain and simple with that. And what was the other part I was going to say about that? Oh yeah, he gives his explanation though. So okay, I mean, they're not totally. I mean, they do know they have to, as movie makers, give something. So that's what they did. They allowed him to sum it up with a couple of lines saying he spent some time in a gamma chamber or something like that. And, he spent all these years treating it like it was disease, blah, 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 blah. I guess what I'm saying is I didn't want that to be handled in a way where this is just going to get explained away in just a couple of sentences, a little paragraph of dialogue. But again, that happens all the time in movies, that you have to have things explained in a quick manner that tries to make sense in almost what's like throwaway dialogue, but it's not throwaway dialogue. It's the best they could do. It's their best. It's their attempt to give their best effort at giving some explanation or closure to a situation. But the way, I don't know, me personally, the way it was handled in Infinity War, I would have expected to play a little bit more of a part in this movie to get at least some kind of scene of a section where this is happening or something. Not to mention, I really thought it was going to happen later in the movie. Because my point is, we don't even get to see a transformation anymore. He's just there, and he's green, and he's big. That right there, off rip, is a problem for me. I'm a mark for Hulk. So when I see the transformation process of Hulk, it's always been since I was a little kid watching the TV show Lou Ferrigno, is so fascinating to me that someone's genetic body, their anatomy anatomically changes into something. Even the Incredible Hulk movie from 2008 with Ed Norton, I used to rewind those transformation scenes all the time. It's just like my favorite parts of those movies, as well as what happened in the first Avengers movie in 2012. So we're not getting that at all. And I felt cheated out of that. Because I expected a merge, but I expected to be something storyline related down the line, maybe even like how they hinted at something like if he changed again, he wouldn't be able to change back. And I guess they're calling themselves making good on that, because that was hinted at in Thor Ragnarok. So I thought that would happen in Endgame, but like with him changing into the Hulk and then realizing when he changed into the Hulk, wait a minute, I got more of myself this time and I'm a little more intelligent. That would have been dope to me. That would have been like fan service payoff to me. Not just he's already there and we didn't get to see it. It just happened off screen. So right there, I'm already frustrated. Like, so again, I really don't even remember how I reacted first time I saw it, because it probably took me a few minutes to just sit there like, are y'all serious with this? Although, to on the positive side, the CGI and motion capture and the look of it was dope. It made sense. There was like this natural progression. Although no, I don't like his green was like faded, and I guess that's some way of saying since it's this mixture of him and Banner, he's not as green as he used to be. Again, I get that kind of stuff. I'm not crazy about it, but okay. But like how his facial features were really Mark Ruffalo-ish, and I don't even would have wanted his voice to be deeper. They could have pitched it still to a lower pitch, but not as low as it was in Thor Ragnarok or something. But again, I guess they're saying if a person was really transforming, they're trying to make it look like this is what it would really be like if somebody's two personalities and all these features and vocal tones and all that were merging. It wouldn't. That's their version, I guess, of how that would play out. But I got used to it after a minute. I just said, I mean, it's like, okay, this is where we're at with this, And then the scene kind of was funny. Like, it's almost like it would have been funny if it was anybody but Hulk. And if it would have happened at some other point in the movie. It was just too much to throw at me at once in terms of disappointment. Because where he's like taking a picture with the kids and he's just like, and Ant-Man he asked him, did they want a picture with him? And they're kind of like, and he's try to play it off like, well, no, I understand, I'm new. And he's like, no, they want a picture. So that was funny. I mean, that's that Mark Ruffalo's comedic ability mixed with Paul Rudd. By the way, I love Paul Rudd. I always did, but like, I don't know. I wasn't crazy about the way they used him in Ant-Man and the Wasp, but I feel like it was like they were trying to push Wasp, so it's like they made Ant-Man look kind of clumsy and goofy and weak, even though he's had more experience with this ability than she has. It's like he regressed in terms of being a fighting superhero. I don't know. Anyway, but the way they used Ant-Man in this movie, similar to what I was saying earlier about Hawkeye, for them to not have been in the last movie, did a great job of using them in this movie. I don't really have any problem with the way everybody was used. Cap definitely made a comeback from the way they used him in Infinity War, but I expected that. And see, this is where I'm harping a lot of negativity, because I expected a payoff with the Hulk because of what happened with him in Infinity War. I mean, I was going on record, I was typing in comment sections on videos ever since Infinity War, when people were talking about Hulk was scared and he got his ass whooped, he didn't come back out because he was scared of Thanos, which, directors and writers, everybody has debunked that and said it was that he, having his own mind, didn't feel like he needs to come out and save Banner all the time because he's really not even interested in being part of Banner. And that made sense to me. It had nothing to do with him being scared. I mean, when you're watching a movie, it's not like I had that theory already. It did look like that's what they were doing, but I figured by the end of the movie, it's more to it than that. I already figured it had to be more to it than that. And it was. But being that happened, I was all over comment sections trying to tell everybody, look, y'all don't even understand. It had nothing to do with being scared. It's going to be a payoff in the fourth one. You're going to see World Breaker Hulk or something. He's going to have his moment. Didn't happen. So, I'm going to get off of him and let's talk about Fat Thor. When they first showed up, that scene was, I love that scene, by the way, Hulk and Rocket on the back of that truck. Just that little bit of charm and the subtle little creative little nuanced little charm that Marvel Studios is able to put into their movies for a scene like that is what makes them great. I just love, if anybody understands what I'm trying to say, like, it's like not lighthearted, it's just a simple moment that's so unsuperhero like, and it has like a charm, like I said, to have these two guys riding around and give you a little scenery, setting up where Thor is now, and I guess Norway or wherever, New Asgard. So they pay attention to details, because that it takes you to another place. That's what they're good at doing, is changing scenery and making you travel with the characters, which puts you in the story even more. That's what Marvel Studios has been great at, is making you connect to these characters and the situations that they're in. That's what I'm trying to say. And it connected you to their situation, riding in that thing, going over, riding in the back of that truck, going to New Asgard. So we get in there, we see Fat Thor. I did crack up when I saw that. Cracked up. I mean, I was glad to see him with long hair, actually. But yeah, and his arms were still big though. That's what was funny. I said that in the theater. It was just funny. But that was a funny concept, and I was with it. Like, okay, he's drunk and he's just depressed, and he's just recluse. But from that point, things in that situation and scene were hit and miss. Him yelling at the kid in the video game, that was corny to me. I didn't find it funny at all. I get it though. Probably a bunch of people found that funny. I mean, sometimes you got to do some humor that is just, I don't want to say lowbrow, but it's just easy. It's like not trying to be complicated. It's going for the easy laugh. The cheap pop, as we say in wrestling type thing. So I get that. I mean, I see that all the time in MCU movies. So when people do criticize their humor, I know that's what they're referring to. It's just those things don't bother me so much, because when you're being funny, just like any comedian, if you're up on stage telling jokes, some of them are going to be whack. That's by the nature. You can't stand up there and have everything come out and be funny every time. So it's like playing basketball. If Kobe Bryant and LeBron, anybody, these guys miss shots, because they're taking these shots and things like that. It's like a quarterback. You're a great quarterback. You're going to throw some interceptions because you sometimes throw passes you shouldn't because you have that much confidence. That's just the laws of performing, hitting a bad note because you're singing. It will happen. So I didn't have so much a problem of the Fat Thor character, as much as like the jokes about it went on too long. And it's interesting because there's a guy, one of my favorite YouTubers. He saw the movie when it premiered the 24th before everybody else. He mentioned, without spoiling, that, well, it kind of is a spoiler, but he said there was a bit about Thor that ran too long, and he said he didn't like it. And that was before, seeing the movie. So I didn't walk in preconceived. I mean, I promise you that I knew exactly what the heck he was talking about. It wasn't because he said it beforehand. Like, I saw this, and I'm like, that's not what I'm envisioning for Thor, being just, it's like the Ragnarok Thor, and I've defended the Ragnarok Thor, but I was happy to see the Infinity War Thor. I guess that's what I'm saying. Like, Ragnarok Thor was cool, but I liked Infinity War Thor better because he still had some of that Ragnarok Thor, but he was badass. So for them to go back to something comical, even though upon subsequent viewings I have gained more appreciation for, as well as hearing other people's thoughts on it, that on YouTube, of course, not really people I've spoken to. That it was a depiction of where he was at emotionally and mentally, like in depression. And when you look at it from that perspective, it's a little more understandable that he looked like that. But again, I didn't really have a problem with him being like that. It was just the jokes that came after that. Like, he was basically the Big Lebowski. The worst case of that, and it was funny again when when they got back to where they were going through the theory, the game plan for getting back to these stones, and they had him come up to talk about the ether, in his experience with the ether, and he was talking about Jane. That was funny, you know what I mean? Well, actually, right before that, I guess, because I think that was when he was sitting in the corner, looking like he was just drunk and sleep. Like, you don't have to do that. It's like, that wasn't funny to me. And somebody's like, yeah, I think he's dead. It's just like, I don't know. He could have been just as funny without making that little piece where he's just sitting there looking stoned and sleep with sunglasses on. Just have him continue to walk around looking like a hobo and, whatever. And having that kind of erratic behavior would have been enough. So that's where I can see where like the gag went on too long. And then even when they went back to the scenes of Thor: The Dark World, he was acting, having a panic attack. I didn't really care for that. It's just like his behavior was kind of childish and weak. For comic relief, if that makes sense, it's like you can show that in a less comedic way, where it's like he was on the level of like like Scooby Doo, like Shaggy from Scooby Doo. He's like he seems scared and panicky, and again, it's like, well, could just consider what he's been through, and if you look at it from the perspective, they were just trying to depict how far gone he's gone because of the blaming himself and everything like that. That makes it a little more palatable, but again, I feel like you already have established that by the way he looks in his sullen behavior, not like him acting erratic and like a panicky person where he had to get slapped some sense into him by Rocket. Those things are just taken a little far, in my opinion. Anyway, so that is cool. He has a discussion with his mom. That was dope. Touching. Good to see Renee Russo again. I always dug her character, which is one of the reasons why I defend Thor: The Dark World. I actually like that movie. It's not really anywhere near the bottom of my MCU movies like a lot of people have it. It's in the bottom, but it's not. It's probably 4 or 5 movies I have lower than Thor Ragnarok. Let's put it like that. If we're talking top 22, I think it's off the top of my head. I think I have it at like 16 or 17, like exactly. Anyway, another great scene where we're talking about once they start going back, and that whole thing was dope. So I have nothing. I'm not gonna say anything about that because I liked everything. I liked everything about what they did with the time travel, the scene where they're talking about the other movies and debunking the different theories, and Scott Lang's like, so you're trying to tell me Back to the Future is complete bullshit? I mean, I loved all that. Rhodey, Don Cheadle always has that kind of charming, wisecracking, sarcastic delivery of his lines, so I enjoyed that. And the plan may be convenient for some people. I don't have a problem with things like that. I usually don't have a problem with suspending my belief with time travel and making up your science rules as you go along, and some things happening a little too easy. I just look at it like, hey, this is comic book stuff. These people are supposed to, a Tony Stark and a Bruce Banner, they're supposed to be geniuses anyway. You know what I mean? Just let them do what they do. You know, understand what I'm saying? Rocket has a little bit of knowledge of stuff. Like, it was kind of interesting that he was able to just find Thanos using whatever technology they had. So, I mean, he has a little technological ability himself. I just rewound way back in early in the movie, but it just popped in my head because every time I see it, I find that kind of funny that he's the one explaining to them. He's standing on a table telling them about all this stuff, how they were able to trace Thanos' activity or whatever. Which is in and of itself is crazy. Like, those people were standing around a table listening to a raccoon. I mean, the MCU was amazing. We came to that point from 2012. You know what I'm saying? From the first Avengers movies to like the culmination of Avengers movie, nobody would have told you there's going to be a raccoon talking to these characters 7 years from now, but it was. So, but anyway, the time travel sequence, other favorite part of, one of my favorite parts of the time travel sequence. I mean, the Dark World stuff was not my favorite. I just actually was pointing out more negatives about that with Thor's behavior than him wanting to run away, and he kept saying, I can't do this, and I guess it was like his depiction of the emotions, I think. So that's more on Chris Hemsworth, and that's my dude, but he was playing it a little too, what's the word I want to say? I don't know, desperate, soft, wimpy, crybaby-ish, whiny. Yeah, there we go. He's playing a little too whiny for me. You can play despair and you can't do it, but I mean, this is the same dude who was badass. Most of the MCU's history, even though he has always been silly, but he ain't been acting like he's scared of stuff. And it's like, well, everybody faces their fear. I don't know. You could have done him better than that. And like I said, especially when I know they're doing it for laughs. See, that's my point. Because you know every bit of that depiction was so they could get laughs more so than to get your sympathy to see that, oh, this guy's struggling with depression. That's why I'm like, I'll take that perception from some people, but it doesn't really come through in the way it's performed unless somebody has to tell you, and it shouldn't be like that. But going to Banner in the Ancient One, that was dope. Pleasant surprise. I love the fact it's like, yeah, wait a minute. They're realizing Black Widow, give her props. They realized that 3 of the stones were in New York at the same time, which people always forget about the Mind Stone, which is always interesting because, Loki showed up with the Mind Stone. So that means Thanos already had that. So, like, we ought to get a backstory of how did he get the Mind Stone in the first place. That would be interesting. So he already had that and put it in a scepter and sent Loki to Earth with it to get the Space Stone. So, yeah, so the Time Stone, the Space Stone, and the Mind Stone were in New York at the same time. And I thought that's cool. So, and they even had an Ancient One fighting off some Chitauri, I believe. So, how do you like that? So back in 2012, we didn't know she was somewhere on top of a building, basically helping them out in some ways. And that conversation was cool. It was very well acted. Again, the acting. And what people don't realize is these people, they say they were shooting these scenes with pieces of scripts without knowing the whole movie. So these people were actually walking in, shooting these scenes with like no real setup of what the premise of your scene is. I mean, I guess they were given some, but people like Mark Ruffalo and Tom Holland who spoil crap, I'm sure I've already read they were given, Mark Ruffalo was given dummy scripts and stuff like that. So, but the point is, and I've seen enough behind the scenes stuff, even just today I saw some behind the scenes stuff online on YouTube, where it's like they shot this thing, of course, both movies back to back, and I remember hearing rumors that they would shoot scenes for Endgame, then they shoot scenes for Infinity War, and they were mixing it up so you didn't know. That's why in Infinity War, I saw a lot of interviews with the actors saying they didn't know whether their characters lived or died or whatever, because they shot scenes where they died and then they shot scenes where they didn't, is the way I looked at it. And the same thing happened with Endgame. Although I find it hard to believe that like Black Widow didn't